Top boxing news!
Ow! Okay, we'll start with this. A tweet that was posted days ago by Mauricio Suleiman. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. The WBC has received a request from both sides, Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte, to extend the free negotiation period, which has been granted. If there is no agreement for a purse bid offer ceremony, will take place on Wednesday, January 26th. That's approximately 2 days from now.
So once again, the purse bid looms.
And I am so fucking bored with this story, I am.
There's too many issues with a Dillian Whyte fight.
Don't get me wrong, it's a massive fight in the UK, it is. It's a stadium fight in the UK. That's how big it could be if Top Rank and Tyson Fury were committed to it. But I've never been convinced they were committed to that fight. For starters, it's a big fight in the UK. Yeah, it is. But Top Rank's a US-based outfit, and they'd want to do it here, not there.
That fucking fight don't mean to the Americans what it means to the Brits.
We all know that. We know that those Brits, they're willing to travel for a big fight, they are, but better still, it's not in America what it is in the United Kingdom, and that's where Top Rank would want to do it. If they wanted to do it, they'd want to do it here.
Because Frank Warren can't bankroll that fight over there.
And over there, that's Tyson Fury's promoter. Over there, in the United Kingdom. Over here in America, he's a Top Rank guy.
The fucking fight's got too many problems.
75-25 or an 80-20 split, Dillian's not happy. He's going through the appeal process as the purse bid looms.
Hoping the WBC can assign a better split.
As if the WBC's ever done him any favors. So I'll go as far as saying that even if they did, even if they gave him a 70-30 split or a 65-35 split, I'm not convinced Tyson Fury would fight this guy. I'm just not. Tyson Fury has a more lucrative, albeit nuanced option, a more novel option.
He seems more interested in fighting Francis Ngannou than fighting Dillian Whyte.
Francis Ngannou, the MMA fighter, the UFC champion who was in action this past weekend in defense of his title. And Tyson Fury seems to have been expressing more interest in a MMA versus boxing crossover fight than a Dillian Whyte showdown. Here in America, that fight does considerable business on pay-per-view. It does considerable business in Las Vegas. And unlike a Dillian Whyte fight, there's no pesky Eddie Hearn and Matchroom to have to fend off, because if you do it as a boxing match, Top Rank's at the helm. Top Rank's the lead promoter.
They ain't gotta worry about no purse bid.
They don't have to worry about Eddie Hearn and Matchroom's wallet. Not if you're doing a fight with Francis Ngannou. If you're doing a fight with Francis Ngannou, you've got the run of the place. You're in control of the show.
You know, I view that as a more realistic option for Tyson Fury than Dillian Whyte.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, don't get me wrong. There is that which needs to be addressed in reference to a Fury versus Ngannou fight. For starters, how committed is Francis Ngannou to fighting someone like Tyson Fury in what would be his maiden voyage into pugilism, his first fight as a boxer? How serious is that guy?
There's a lot of fucking money in it for him if he is.
A lot more than what he's making as an MMA fighter. A lot more than what he's making as a UFC champion. But how serious is he about crossing over, and what's the ETA on that? There's a lot that needs to be addressed there, but I'd sooner believe that Tyson Fury would fight Francis Ngannou in a freak show boxing versus MMA match than...
I just don't see this guy fighting Dillian Whyte.
I don't, and... I vaguely recall the Tyson Fury people a couple of days ago, maybe a week or so, saying that they're going to get him out there in the spring with or without Dillian Whyte. So when you have that kind of mindset, and the situation in and of itself between the teams is as murky as it is, Dillian's not happy with the split, he's going through the appeal process while at the same time being in arbitration with the WBC and attempting to negotiate with the Fury people. It's all very immaterial, it's all very chaotic. Not the ideal setting to do a fight, a big fight, between Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury, because that's what it is, but it's only really a big fight, a big fight in the UK.
It's a big fight in the UK.
It's got too many problems, too many fucking problems, too many egos, too many demands, too many issues. It's hard to imagine it actually happens. And listen, if Tyson Fury ends up fighting him, I'd be happy to be wrong about the whole goddamn thing, because I'm a boxing fan that wants to see boxing matches. There's a lot of bad blood between those two boys, and I'd love to see him hash it out in the ring.
But I wouldn't be surprised if Tyson Fury goes his whole career and don't fight this guy.
I mean, that's more or less how Dillian Whyte's situation with Deontay Wilder has played out. Deontay Wilder seems very much like a man who's on the verge of retirement. And even if he does have a comeback fight, I sincerely doubt it's going to be Dillian Whyte. So the same could apply to Tyson Fury. He might go his whole career having not boxed his domestic rival. We've seen that before.
Tell you, that Ngannou fight seems realistic.
It all depends on how committed Francis Ngannou really is to crossing over into boxing, and whether it's a serious crossover, whether or not it's a serious crossover to where he's going to groom himself to eventually be ready for a title fight, or if it's just a cash grab. He wants to fight someone like a Tyson Fury straight away, because Francis has been adamant that he means to go into the world of boxing.
You know he's good friends with Carlos Takam,
his countryman from Cameroon. Francis has been very adamant that before he retires from combat sports altogether, he will delve into the world of boxing, though how serious a crossover it's going to be is the question. Is it a crossover to where he's going to have several bring-along fights to get himself in the swing of things and fully understand the sport, or is it a cash grab the way that Maymack was a cash grab? Mayweather versus Conor McGregor.
Do you remember how commercially successful that fight was?
I know it was farce for Conor McGregor to think he could actually box with Floyd Mayweather Jr. in an actual boxing match, and we all know how it ended, and in many ways it would be farce for Francis Ngannou to think he can actually beat someone like Tyson Fury straight away without proper preparation. Even with preparation, it's not a lock, it's not a guarantee you've got the chops to make it as an elite level boxer. Better still, if he were to fight this guy straight away, win or lose, he'd make a lot of fucking money.
This is an insanely commercially viable fight.
Commercially viable in the United States, the way that Top Rank likes it, the way they would want it. And it's nowhere near as murky a situation as what we're seeing now between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. So I wouldn't dismiss this as just banter, as just an idea they're playing with. This is a legitimate possibility. Let me tell you something. Francis Ngannou potentially crossing over into boxing. It's a different kettle of fish. Francis Ngannou, who said,
In reference to his issues with the UFC,
he said the terms of the contract, everything that they put into it, they hold you in captivity. You can't do anything. You have no rights. The contract is one-sided. You don't even have health insurance.
I'll tell you something, he might not have health insurance as a boxer either.
But he'd make so much fucking money, that wouldn't be a problem. That wouldn't be an issue. He'd cross over into the world of boxing with an already existing fan base that would follow him and would cheer him on. He added, when asked if he wants to still be a UFC fighter. Good question. Do the UFC still want me to fight there? You should ask them. They should be the ones answering that question. Francis Ngannou, who made under $1 million this past weekend, his reported purse was something to the tune of $630,000. He could make well over that as a boxer, and he could easily get a multi-fight deal with a Matchroom, with a Top Rank, and get paid top dollar.
He could get paid what he was getting paid as a UFC champion,
fighting stiffs as a boxer, while he gains experience and makes his bones as a boxer. Those are the kind of options that are on the table for Francis Ngannou, depending on how serious he is about this crossover. He could make the kind of money he hasn't been making as a mixed martial artist. So believe me when I tell you, this is a genuine possibility.
Not exclusive to a Tyson Fury fight.
Not exclusive to a cash grab, though in the realm of cash grabs, he could make a lot of money in one fell swoop, fighting the likes of a Tyson Fury, or he could take a more measured approach.
Just in keeping with the theme of heavyweights.
Bob Arum says,
I'd be prepared to discuss Wilder versus Anderson by the end of 2022.
Arum admits Wilder is still fully capable of beating anyone in the weight class, but also feels Anderson, 11-0 with 11 knockouts, will be ready to beat the dangerous puncher by the end of the year.
Wilder is a terrific talent. He hits like a mule, as Tyson would attest to. Pretty much anybody in the heavyweight division would lose to Wilder. The one guy who will be equipped to beat him by the end of this year is Anderson. I would be prepared to discuss a potential Wilder versus Anderson fight by the end of the year. We are grooming him to be the next heavyweight champion after Fury.
That fight's a pipe dream.
It won't happen. Once Fury walks away from the sport, Arum expects Anderson to take over the heavyweight throne.
Yes, that's what I really believe he will be. When Fury hangs up the gloves, Jared will be in a pole position to become the next great heavyweight. Mike Tyson was a tremendous puncher who didn't show much boxing ability. Jared has shown boxing ability and power. He reminds me more of a young Muhammad Ali than a Mike Tyson.
Whoever he reminds you of, Bob, Wilder's not going to fight him.
Deontay Wilder, who already admitted he was offered more money to fight Anthony Joshua than what was on the table for him to fight Tyson Fury. He didn't fight that guy. He didn't fight Dillian Whyte, who we just talked about, who we just mentioned, previous segment. He didn't fight Dillian Whyte, who had more marquee value then than Jared Anderson has now and will have by the end of the year. Essentially what I'm getting at is there were a lot of guys out there that Wilder never fought. Some had more marquee value than others. There was a whale of a fight at his feet, and it's a fight that he didn't have. You think about the network and promotional politics associated with an Anderson versus Wilder fight. I myself have a very high opinion of Jared Anderson, and I will agree that he has all the makings of a guy who could take over this division once this cycle of heavyweights has gone. But as far as a Wilder fight, a passing of the torch fight,
Wilder's not going to stick around long enough to see himself become a journeyman.
a stepping stone for young unbeaten fighters like Jared Anderson. I mean, I just don't see it. Wilder made a lot of money with Tyson Fury in their last two outings, their last two fights, and it's hard to imagine that Deontay Wilder could find the motivation to get back out there for anything less than what he made with Tyson Fury. And Anderson versus Wilder don't make that kind of money. It don't.
I don't even think a Ruiz fight would make the same kind of money the Fury fights made.
I think a Wilder versus Ruiz fight would be considerably bigger than a Wilder versus Anderson fight, but even that fight, I'm not convinced that fight commercially.
Well, I don't think it'd do $19 million at the gate.
I think it could do fairly well on pay-per-view, maybe 300,000, maybe even 400,000 pay-per-view buys. It could. It's just that Andy Ruiz Jr., he's really not buzzing right now, so I don't expect the same kind of reception that the Wilder versus Fury fights got. So when you start talking about a Jared Anderson, a guy with less marquee value than an Andy Ruiz that poses some risks to an aging Deontay Wilder coming off of 2 consecutive losses, I just don't see a fight like that happening. I'd sooner expect Wilder to retire and go into the movie industry, get into acting. He's always had a knack for theatricality. What about all those rumors that he was going to play Clubber Lang's son in the next Creed? Didn't ESPN, by way of their Twitter account, post a video of Adonis Creed?
You mean Michael B. Jordan?
Didn't they post something with Michael B. Jordan hitting a speed bag in what looked like preparation for his next outing as Adonis Creed, the son of the late great Apollo Creed, in what is the next chapter of the Creed saga? I mean, didn't we just see that? Maybe Wilder can be a part of that. There have been rumors about that for a very long time.
Being honest with you, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he doesn't come back. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires.
Trying to reclaim a world title at this time when things are so murky in the heavyweight division, it's very inopportune for Wilder. Those alphabet titles are going to be tied up for a while, and who even knows if he still has enough passion for the sport left to return.
Punches don't rebound off of losses the same way cerebral boxers do.
Once that air of invincibility dissipates and they start to feel their own mortality, they're never quite the same after that. And that might be true of Deontay Wilder, who here and now we don't even know.
There's no tentative fight date or nothing.
News on Wilder has gone silent. News on Wilder has gone cold. So, I mean,
Wilder versus Anderson is a pipe dream. It ain't gonna happen.
finally, in lightweight news, former super featherweight IBF champion Tevin Farmier says, everybody is asking me if Fama versus Ryan Garcia, if it's happening. I wanted to, just waiting on a response. It's definitely been talks with Golden Boy Promotions and my team. So there we have confirmation from at least one side of things that Tevin Farmer is in fact in the running for Ryan Garcia's big comeback fight. And I've often talked about how a guy in Ryan Garcia's shoes,
Young guy.
a guy who's just a contender, shouldn't be having a big comeback fight because what are you coming back from? Ryan himself,
He very recently opened up about his mental health struggles.
this whole mental health stuff from Ryan is being received differently by different people. Some people believe he's actually struggling with something. Some people believe he's just a peacock. In any event, Ryan, in his own words, said, when I got to the gym, I just burst out crying for no reason in front of everybody, and I ran out of the gym, Garcia recalled. That was the moment I decided to pull out of the Fortuna fight. Canelo, everybody was there, and I was just trying to work out, and I was just trying to hold it in, Garcia continued. I just burst. I got out of the gym, I said, I gotta go, guys. Garcia was originally scheduled to return on November 27th against Diaz, but he suffered a hand injury a month out from the bout. The Victorville, California native is reportedly set to return sometime in the spring against a still unannounced opponent. I was crying and walking with my lawyer, Lupe Valencia, outside, and I was like, what's wrong with me, man? I just don't get this. I was walking with him for like an hour, and I just couldn't get myself together. I didn't know what was going on. My body just felt off. Everything felt off. It was just not mental, it was like physical. I just felt like I couldn't do anything.
Well, if he's telling the truth, that's not encouraging.
If you take Ryan's account of events at face value and take it for what it is, that is not conducive towards competing at the elite levels of this sport, because in so many words, you're exhibiting a mental fragility that could impede your ability to perform in high-level, high-tension situations. It's what I always told you. If you believe him, it's not encouraging. But if you don't believe him and you think he's just a drama queen, well, that's not encouraging either. Ryan Garcia himself credits therapy for getting him through his most recent rough patch, a stretch that included battling suicidal thoughts. It helped me a lot, and then I kind of just went into this mode where I accepted it, Garcia said. I stopped fighting against the current and just went with it, and let myself recover. He added, it was a pretty good thing for me.
If the guy's that unstable, how's he supposed to deal with these high-level, high-pressure situations?
He hasn't exactly reached the mountaintop as a boxer, been in a big fight that has that big fight feel, big nerves.
If you take his story at face value, it's not encouraging.
And if you don't take his story at face value, if you don't buy into this mental health stuff and you think he's just being a peacock, he's just being a prima donna, that's not encouraging either because of the amount of time he's wasting on it. Any way you approach this story, any way you slice it, it's not encouraging, and it lends credence to the notion that Ryan Garcia might actually retire from the sport of boxing at age 27. He just might. He said he would.
You see, he's not interested in fighting for world titles.
For whatever reason, mental health issues or otherwise, he just isn't. He's not interested in fighting Devin Haney or George Kambosos Jr. I mean, those aren't the kind of conversations that are going on. He's literally on the comeback trail, and he hasn't even become a world champion yet.
He's either unstable or he's full of shit, but neither are encouraging.